Hey guys, today we're going to take a look at a game published by Sony Online Entertainment. Vanguard Saga of Heroes, originally developed by Sigil Games, was acquired by SOE after Sigil went bankrupt shortly after the game's release. Since that time, SOE has made numerous changes to the game. However, Vanguard has been in a steady decline since its rocky release in 2007. SOE hopes to remedy this by taking the game free to play. Today, we're just going to take a look at the game. I'm going to talk a little bit about it, and you guys can kind of see what it's about. I just thought I would try it out, so we're going to go ahead and click Next. And after it loads a bit, okay, here's where you customize your character. Character customization options are not quite as deep as I would like. It looks like they are. It certainly looks like you have quite a bit of control over the way your character looks, but you really don't. Most of these different sliders don't really change a whole lot. So actually I think, again, I just want to go with the default, so I'll just click Finish and I will click Play. Alright, I edited out the loading screen there, and here we are at the racial starting zone. Whenever I play Vanguard, I like to pick the racial starting areas because they're a lot more interesting in my opinion, and they just look nicer. When you pick one of these guys, you start way up on top of this cliff here and overlooking Call, which is, if the game has a popular city, has a hub city, Call would probably be that city. There's the city right there in front of my character. And actually, when the game goes free to play, a lot of these racial starting zones are going to be gone in favor of, I think, 3 or 4 specific starting zones that you can pick from in addition to the Isle of Dawn. And while I'm going to miss these starting zones, I can't exactly say that I have a problem with what they're doing, simply because Vanguard has always had population issues, and I think it's going to be a good thing to try to herd all the players into a smaller number of zones. There should be a lot more people around to handle a lot more different quests and such. Either way, these starting zones are not quite as direct as the Isle of Dawn. However, I think we should still not have too much trouble figuring out where we're supposed to go and what we're supposed to do. I've got to kill these little insects here. And it should be noted that when this game came out, it never really had a huge amount of publicity. I mean, it wasn't quite as anticipated as maybe Lord of the Rings Online or Rift, and especially not as anticipated as Star Wars The Old Republic. However, it had quite a dedicated following, and the reason it had such a dedicated following is because Sigil Games, the original developers of Vanguard, was actually headed up by Brad McQuaid, who was the creative mind behind the original EverQuest. A lot of the fan base behind this game actually looked at Vanguard to be the spiritual successor to the original EverQuest. Most of Vanguard's initial player base had been very disappointed by EverQuest 2 and how much it didn't resemble the original EverQuest. This game has a lot in common with EverQuest, both EverQuest 1 and 2, and in my opinion kind of sits somewhere in between in terms of the casual hardcore spectrum. And probably my favorite part about Vanguard is just simply how immersive this world is. I don't know under how much detail that YouTube shows here, but if I'm going to stop, I'll stop for a second, and you can see, just look at the grass swaying in the wind. And if I were around some trees, well, maybe you can sort of see those palm trees a little bit. How the palm trees sway in the wind, and look at the sky. I mean, even something as simple as the sky looks incredibly realistic and just incredibly beautiful. I cannot wait till this game goes free to play. One of the biggest problems I think I've had with Vanguard, and I think that most new players have, is not that Vanguard is a bad game. No, we all like Vanguard. Very few people actively criticize Vanguard and say it's a bad game. Most people will simply say that there's just not enough people playing. And Vanguard, like I said, because it's the sort of a spiritual successor to the original EverQuest, places a huge emphasis on group content. So when you get past a certain level, say around 10 or 11, it gets more and more difficult to find actual group content. I mean, it gets more and more difficult to find actual solo content. And Vanguard's low population, again, makes it incredibly difficult for new players to pick up and play the game, simply because it's very difficult to find leveling players out there. The game has the game, while it does have a low population, it's extremely top-heavy. Almost everyone is sitting at the level cap, and new players are somewhat of a rarity. I find that most people generally last until about level 20 or 30 or 35 when the solo quests really start to dry up, and then they usually quit out of frustration. But I do hope that with free-to-play, a lot more people come to play the game, which will hopefully open up a lot more of the pay-to-play, or not pay-to-play, but will hopefully open up a lot more of the group-based content for people to be able to finish. Even so, from what I understand, Vanguard, or from what I understand, Sony Online Entertainment is actually implementing a solo quest line to take players all the way from level 1 to 55 without ever having to group with another person. While I think a lot of Vanguard veterans will hate this idea, I think it's good for the game. If free-to-play comes and it doesn't really bring the increase in population that all of us fans are hoping it brings, new players are still going to need some way that they can play through the game and catch up to the veterans. And I think adding a solo quest line is just about the most foolproof way of going about this. I can't wait to go back and try Vanguard again once the game goes free to play and to take advantage of the solo quest line. I have a feeling that this might actually be the time that I stick around, that I stick to Vanguard for good. So I'm making some progress in my quest here. I just finished this one here, and I have to collect some more of these little leaves. I've kind of been neglecting that while I've been talking. So I'm going to go up here and pick this leaf. I have to pick one more leaf here, and then I have to find some guy. And this game, I'll show you. Take a look at the map. That has got to be one of the worst maps I have ever seen in a modern MMO. It's just awful. It's basically no help at all. That's another somewhat appealing aspect that some people might find that appealing. This game is all about adventuring, figuring out where you're supposed to go on your own. But that doesn't mean that the game totally leaves you clueless. When you look at the map here, instead of having really detailed maps of zones, you have just a general map of the continent which you can zoom in and out of, and some points of interest. And you'll notice it doesn't have like an area, a big red circle or something that says, here's where you kill all your mobs. Instead, if you look at the compass up at the top middle, you just follow this red line, and the red line will take you to wherever you need to go to turn in your quests and such. I'm going to turn in this quest here, and it looks like I get several different kinds of rewards. I'm going to pick the one for tanks, and I'm going to equip it. Press the B button to open my inventory, and it looks like I'm still looking for that person, but if I hit the L key down here where it says locations, I can click on that person's name, and then it automatically on my compass it tells me where to go. And again, look at the sky. I mean, this is a sunrise in Vanguard, and it's just amazing. At max level, there are actually flying mounts that you can purchase for yourself, and you can actually go and fly all around this beautiful world, and I think that would be absolutely wonderful. I really can't wait to experience that. Anyway, I just found this guy I was supposed to talk to, so let's talk to him.
Work for you.
See what he has to say. He's giving me a bag and another quest to go kill things. I like to kill things. Let's go around here. This continent is actually the continent of Qualia. There are 3 continents: Thestra, Qualia, and Kojan. Kojan is more like a series of islands. From what I understand, back in the day, it was actually supposed to be a full-fledged continent. However, due to budgetary and time constraints, they were not able to finish the entire continent, so they just created it as a series of islands instead. Qualia is, as you can see, more of a desert continent, whereas Thestra is the more forested continent. And when Vanguard originally came out, it was said that you could actually level from 1 to the level cap all the way on one continent. And so you would have certain subsets of players that leveled exclusively on one part of the world, and another subset of players that lived exclusively on that leveled exclusively on another part of the world. And it sounded like a really great concept, and the fact that you could actually trade. There was no global auction house at the time, so you could actually trade. Our continent was trading was localized. Auction houses and such things were localized. You actually could, or different parts of the game world had things on were said to have had things on sale for different prices to sort of simulate a real world economy where not everything costs the same everywhere in the world. Ultimately, Vanguard never quite amassed the population to support such a system. However, it's still a neat concept, and it just goes to show you the sheer amount of content that a game like Vanguard provides. For a game that really hasn't had any content updates since its release, minus a few things here and there, this game has a massive amount of content, and it truly is a very impressive game. And you probably could not ever experience everything Vanguard has to offer in just one playthrough. You would almost have to create an alt just to see everything that Vanguard offers its players. Now the problem, though, with this, again, is the fact that there's simply not enough players to go around to experience all the content. So a lot of Vanguard's greatest strengths are completely negated by the fact that there's just nobody around to play with. And so that's, not only is that a bad thing, it's just sad and depressing. Vanguard is a great game, and if it just had more people playing it, I think that it would definitely be a huge success. And again, if you're wondering again why nobody did play it, well,
let me teach you.
This game had a lot of problems, especially at launch. It was released too early, had a huge amount of bugs, and it had incredibly poor optimization for its day. Since SOE took it over after Sigil went out of business, they've done a really good job at fixing a lot of the game's bugs, and combined with a general increase in the power of today's computer hardware, the game actually runs at a playable frame rate for most people with gaming PCs. So I think that now is a great time for Vanguard to go free to play, because now the game is probably in better shape than it's ever been before and will ever be. And again, it's just too good of a game to just wither away and die. And I think that those at SOE realize this, and I'm glad to see that they're finally taking some initiative and finally giving this game some much needed attention, making it go free to play. And I hope that it brings a lot of success to this game, because I feel that it deserves it. Well, that just about wraps up my first look with Vanguard. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to leave them below in the comments box, and I will see you guys later.